Hey, Randy Joe here, and welcome back to the channel where today we're going to be continuing with the Cocteau Twins discography and listening to the next album, of course going in chronological order. The last one we checked out was The Moon and the Melodies with their collaborative effort with Harold Budd. Loved it, a very ambient focused record with some kind of Cocteau Twins-esque twinge to it, but still felt like it was a little bit split down the middle between the two collaborations there. However, this is back to the solo kind of work of Cocteau Twins, of course, with today's record, their 1988 release, Bluebell Knoll. Bluebell Knoll is, once again, another short record, as always, with them. This one only 34 minutes and 58 seconds and 10 tracks, meaning most of these tracks are going to be pretty quick. A lot of them coming in at that just the 3-minute mark, and if they're really lucky, I guess. But for the most part, this seems like another short one from them, which I'm excited because, I think they have a very nice, quick, and easy, breezy, beautiful cover girl kind of style to them that makes them so appealing. And they're easy to take in with their very dreamlike atmosphere. And yet this easiness doesn't affect the musicality at all. In fact, I feel like it adds a lot of depth to it, surprisingly enough. So without further ado, let's get into it. Bluebell Knoll. I've heard a lot of good things about this record. I know it's not as spoken about as, maybe a Heaven or Las Vegas or Treasure, but this one seems to be among some people's favorites. So let's get into it with the title track here, Bluebell Knoll. All right, here we go. Oof. Harder start than I'm used to for them. Quite a rapid, kind of jittery, very metallic sound to it. Love the kind of drawn out cold synth in the background there. It's much more soft in its adjustments. Oh. Love this percussion coming in here. Oh, it's getting quite kind of monstrous the way it's spilling over. Man, that percussion is like echoey and a little bit more clear compared to this washed out synth that's really hazy. It sounds like crashing waves in a sense. What an opener that was. Love the back end, especially with that percussion that slides in, but it has a great build up, especially with that oscillating sort of synth that is right from the beginning to the very end. It feels very engaging in that sense, very fast-paced, before that kind of washed-out beach-like ending there is with the sounds like crashing waves up against gorgeous percussion that is in the distance. Here's Athol-Bros is the next one. Already, I feel like with these two tracks, the sound is already very different from the previous ones. It's not as gradual. It's a bit more of an instantaneous kind of approach. I really like, you got Fraser here on top, but her vocals underneath kind of work as a her voice underneath the much higher pitch approach there kind of works as its own instrument. It feels like almost like a percussion or something with it was shifting around. Such a sweet high-pitched regimen she sings in. Oh, and those backing vocals she provides. The drum work is definitely like punchier this time around. Oh, I thought there was one more. Definitely a lot more punchy in the drums, I feel like, so far on this LP, compared to the last few records, where I feel like it was a lot more subdued. Some records feel like they almost lacked a percussion, maybe intentionally so, whereas this album definitely feels like it is much clearer while still being, you know, soaked in its reverb, like I expect from Cocteau Twins, of course. I love that one as well. Maybe not as strong as that opener, but I still really liked the display of Fraser's vocals on that one. Here's Caroline's Fingers. Let's go. Interesting titles, as always. But what do you expect from someone who doesn't necessarily even construct lyrics to their music? Bit of an optimism to this one. Oh. She sounds like especially sweeter on this one. Oh! I like the way she's even changing in the way she's pronouncing these fake words here. Not even a real word she's singing, as far as we can tell, given the fact that she constructs her own language in her music. But she's rolling the R's on some of these words, which really adds a lot of character to an already very characterized sort of language. Just like that. Perfect. Very interesting. A unique creative mind, that's for sure, with her music. It seems a little bit quieter. I don't know why. Oh, I really like this one. It's so much sweeter. I like the slow addition of the synths coming in. I think I typically prefer Fraser singing in this higher voice as well. It really adds just to the incredibly airy atmosphere of the music. I like that one a lot. Definitely my favorite of the three so far. Already just a fantastic, fantastic album so far. I really love what we're hearing. Caroline's Fingers is probably my favorite of the three. Really like the approach they took, even more soft and higher pitched in a sense, and felt a lot more airy and sweeter than those first two tracks. But still feels very much in vein with the rest of the record. Here's For Phoebe, Still a Baby. Their early records being a lot more gothic, and then their later records being a lot more dreamlike and maybe more optimistic and sweeter. I feel like, you know, with the last couple records, this one and maybe Victoria Land and to some degree maybe Treasure, we really start to see the gothic kind of elements drop quite a bit more as they embrace the softer, more dreamlike approach. And I feel like Bluebell Knoll is almost entirely rid of the gothic nature, because by the time you get to Heaven in Las Vegas, the record after this, to me, that's a full-on dream pop record with no gothic sense to it. So it's interesting to see that evolution from the band from one of a very kind of angsty gothic nature to a much more sweet, optimistic, and dreamy nature. Very interesting transition. And you can hear it. I feel like here, like this already feels like a sweeter Heaven in Las Vegas cut. I love the steadiness of this one, the slower nature of it. Feels very romantic in a sense. Maybe a tribute to having a child. I wonder if this is when Fraser and Guthrie had their kid. Not much to say about this one. It's a sweet one. Much more kind of sprawling and beautiful in a sense. Just feels like a sweet kind of sense of romanticism. Maybe as a tribute to having a kid. I'm not sure if this was around the time that Fraser and Robin had their kid. But it's a beautiful cut. And it does remind me a lot of stuff we'd hear on Heaven in Las Vegas, which I feel like that's the biggest thing from this album so far, is you could really hear that sound start to come to fruition. Here is the Itchy Glowbo Blow. Titles are, again, like I said, as interesting as ever. That one thing never changed with them. This one feels a lot more muddy and messy in the mix, personally. Not sure about this one. There's a lot going on, a lot more layering than the last one for sure. Robin's guitar work, that's so reverb heavy, is a lot more like in your face with this cut, a lot more front focused. Not sure how I feel about it personally. Oh, I do like this sudden change. Those nice bells. Again, adds to that flourishing optimism that they work with. Okay, I did like that little detour. Definitely not my favorite of the batch so far, but I did like that little detour we got. But still, it felt like it was a lot more messy in the mix, and it felt like they were almost falling behind at this point with what they've already done so far. Didn't feel like something that was as, working towards the progression. Felt like a little bit behind them at that point. Here's Cico Buff. See, but stuff like this I like. They're starting some of these tracks with a very different kind of atmosphere and approach than you're used to. Man, I love the reverb on the guitar there. Really takes you away. Reminds me of Lazy Calm off of Victorialand. This one's so sweet and delicate. Just a very pretty and sweet atmosphere in this one. I feel like we're floating away. I much prefer them in this softer, more kind of wholesome approach that they tend to do. Like I said, Lazy Calm off of Victorialand, that first track, it's just so beautiful and it really basks in the atmosphere. And this feels like it's kind of mimicking that same sort of style, which I prefer over their much more kind of abrupt kind of cuts. Love the contrasting vocals there. Those distant, angelic vocals on the left side here. Higher pitched, paralleling this sweet lead vocal. That was a beautiful one. Very angelic, very otherworldly in a way, like kind of expected from them. But I think this is my favorite on here. I know I really liked Caroline's Fingers as well. Thought that was fantastic. And for Phoebe, Still a Baby is also a clear top contender of the track list. But this one here, track 6, Cico Buff, just felt so peaceful and meditative, and was easily one of my favorites so far. Here's Suckling the Mender. Like I said, each one opens with its own little identity there. The percussion on this one's a little bit more in the forefront, much more prodding. I like the gradual kind of layering on this one. It definitely feels a lot more careful in this build-up. Oh, those guitars. Very meditative and like beachy those guitars were there. It just felt like they were the way they strummed away and had a soak of reverb. Right there. Just like that. Gorgeous. Another great one. Great layering on it. Really comes together in a much more gradual fashion. Like I said, track 5, Itchy Glowbo Blow, to me was a lot more messy in its mix, a lot more abrupt in the layering, whereas track 7 is a great example of a careful sort of laying to it. I feel like it all really came together in a much more softer sense. Here's Spooning Good Singing Gum. The percussion is a lot clearer, like I said. A lot more in the forefront on this record than any other record, I think, so far. Very different and unique to this record. Not much to say about this one, but I do just, in general, love the direction of this record so far. The second half definitely feels like it's stepping into a little bit more of its own unique meditative approach that I feel like at this point Cocteau Twins was already kind of playing around with and perfecting with their last couple records. Feels very beachy here, surprisingly. Very just tranquil. Oh, what a roughness on those guitars, I believe it is. Such a electrified sound to it in comparison to the rest. I did like that one again. Once again, everything from track 6 onwards feels like it's following a certain strategy. Here's a Kissed Out Red Floatboat. Bit more of like an electronic approach, I would say, on some of these, like percussive elements, I guess you'd say. It definitely, I don't know, it feels like a lot more in your face compared to how they typically are. Definitely a lot more of an experimental approach, because I feel like they're playing with their formula at this point of being a lot more atmospheric and a lot more sweet and wholesome, while still adding all these kind of unique production choices, such as, for example, that jarring production, or that jarring kind of oscillating synth there, and the percussion throughout the record as well being a lot more in the forefront. Feels experimental to what they were already doing at this point. Maybe they're just kind of playing with ideas and trying to feel out what works and what doesn't work on this record. Man, I actually do love the way this one is evolving and growing into such a beast. Like all these different elements sliding in seamlessly. Oh. You know what? I really like the metallic sort of approach on this one. And I was just like riding it out. Feels very extraterrestrial in a sense. Beautiful ending on that one. That one really all came together and kind of shocked me, because at first I wasn't really feeling it, but as you got to that second half, that metallic sound, that synth, really kind of moves around in every direction. Just feels like one of the most experimental tracks they've done so far on the record. It feels a lot more claustrophobic, while at the same time kind of soaring above itself in that second half. Here's Ella, Megalast, Burls, Forever. Again, what are these titles? We've got that. We've got Kissed Out Red Floatboat. We got Spooning Good, Singing Gum, Itchy, Glow, Blow, Blow. You know, these are the titles I come to expect from Cocteau Twins, but on this record especially, I feel like they are turning it up to 10 to the max. Final track here, Ella Megablast. Oh, skipped it for some reason. Holy shit. A jarring start. It's a bit more of a down-tempo one. A nice, softer closer. Oh. A bit of a dreamy xylophone bouncing around here. Love that dreamlike approach on this. It's like we're floating away here. Robin's guitar, so washed out, bouncing around here. Just absolutely drenched in that reverb. That was a sweet one too. Very angelic, and kind of feels like a lot like, you know, something that would be on their next record, Heaven or Las Vegas, which closing out the record here, Bluebell Knoll coming to an end. And I gotta say, one thing that stands out to me is this is definitely them really pushing and stepping into that direction of Heaven or Las Vegas, and really leaving the gothic nature behind. I feel like it is pretty much completely gone at this point, and the DNA of those early records is kind of transformed into this dreamlike atmosphere that they become known for with Heaven or Las Vegas onwards. And on top of that, I would say this record, isn't as poppy, or maybe not as accessible as a Heaven or Las Vegas, because it tries to do a little bit more in terms of experimentation and trying out different ideas. And I think some of it works, but some of it can get a little too messy and kind of muddy in the mix. The one that really, to me, didn't do much was track 5, Itchy Glow Blow Blow, which was very kind of claustrophobic at times. I felt the layering and the mixing just wasn't, you know, their clearest or their most interesting, where you compare it to some of their later tracks here, where the evolution of the track was much more gradual, and as it all came together, the mixing was a lot more dynamic and diverse, I would say. You know, some of the sounds that they go for here sound kind of noisy in a sense up against this beauty, which again feels like a little bit more of an experimental nature, especially with the percussion sometimes being a lot more in the forefront. And some of it works, like I said. Some of it I'm not particularly fond of. You know, sometimes it makes me wish it would go a little bit more into the softer direction at times, but that's just me personally. I do really enjoy, though, the bulk of this record. Like, you have track 10 closing out there, was very sweet, very reminded me of Heaven in Las Vegas. Loved A Kissed Out Red Floatboat. Track 6 is easily my favorite here. A lot more meditative, a lot more tranquil, which is more up my alley, especially with a track like Lazy Calm on Victoria Land, which I've mentioned multiple times throughout this reaction already. That was easily my favorite on that record because of how kind of ambient and tranquil and just kind of hypnotic that track is off Victoria Land. And Cico Buff kind of matches that energy. Caroline's Fingers as well does feel like a track that would also be on A Heaven in Las Vegas. So Bluebell Knoll is, to me, a really solid record, but to me feels like it's also a transition record or another record of theirs where it feels like they are changing their sound and trying to go into their next phase. Because for the most part, I would say that Cocteau Twins almost has like a 3-phase approach to their music: the gothic approach, the ambient approach, and then the dream pop approach. And it's kind of interesting to see how it all plays out. But again, Bluebell Knoll, a solid record, does feel like a solid precursor of Heaven in Las Vegas. But that does it for today's video. If you liked the video, please hit like and subscribe to follow along and listening to more Cocteau Twins alongside myself. Go ahead and check out the Patreon in the description below if you want to see unedited content of all my Cocteau Twins videos so far, as well as my Pink Floyd and my Bjork reactions and my Kate Bush reactions, everything I've covered on this channel this year, as well as new album releases, fully unedited on the Patreon for just $5 a month. But if you don't want to spend the extra money, that's completely understandable. Stick around, subscribe to the channel, and watch the edited videos right here. As always, my name is Randy Joe. I appreciate you watching, and I'm signing off.